So one of the greatest privileges of being a pastor is being invited into some of the most sacred, intimate moments of people's lives that I would ordinarily not be a part of. I have the gift of sharing in some of life's greatest joys: baptizing infants, officiating weddings, blessing new homes, rejoicing in healings and recoveries. And I also have the gift of journeying with others through some of life's deepest sorrows, being present in the ICU after the drowning or the car wreck, offering prayers of calm and peace in the crisis situations, presiding over funeral services, and committing loved ones to their final resting places. One of the highest honors is when I have the opportunity to sit with someone as they are dying. It is in this space that I consistently experience God's presence in a profound and extraordinary way. I find myself in a thin place. So Celtic spirituality is credited with coining the term thin places. A thin place is a space or a moment where the distance between heaven and earth seems nearly non-existent, when it seems as though only a thin, porous layer divides the spiritual world and the visible world. We may experience thin places in certain locations or in nature, in various moments or events in our lives. Thin places are all around us. We just have to be open to them. There are no set rules or formulas for encountering a thin place. We simply know we are in one when we experience the world from a different perspective, a perspective rooted in the deeply felt presence of God and sense of the eternal. In these liminal spaces, there's a connection, a tangible connection between the reality that we see and the spiritual reality that remains unseen. When I have the privilege of being with someone as they are transitioning from this life to the next, it's as if there's an opening between heaven and earth. The door between this world and eternity is cracked just enough to perceive the incredible glory and beauty that awaits us on the other side of this life. The glory and beauty captured in our scripture reading for today. So our passage comes to us from the book of Revelation, which is the last book of the Bible. And Revelation can be a bit of a daunting read because it's apocalyptic in nature. Apocalyptic literature is a genre of religious writing that uses symbolic imagery and visions and deep metaphors to reveal divine mysteries. Other examples of apocalyptic literature, it's hard to say, in the Bible are the second half of the book of Daniel and parts of Isaiah, Ezekiel, and Zechariah. The author of Revelation identifies himself as John, and historically the book was attributed to the Apostle John. But today most scholars think that this was actually written by a prophet named John who lived a bit later than the apostle. Regardless, the book details a profound and engrossing vision given by God to a man named John. So our scripture this morning is found near the end of the book, and we're in chapter 21. After describing major upheavals and cosmic battles, John closes with a stunning description of a new creation. So let's now hear these words from scripture. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "See, the home of God is among mortals. He will dwell with them. They will be his peoples, and God himself will be with them and be their God. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. Death will be no more. Mourning and crying and pain will be no more, for the first things have passed away." And the one who was seated on the throne said, "See, I am making all things new." Also, he said, "Write this, for these words are trustworthy and true." And then he said to me, "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end." Now, these words are just a small part of John's vision of a new creation. But from them, we can glean significant truths about what awaits us on the other side of this reality. In the new creation, there's total redemption. God dwells with God's people. We will see God face to face. There's no more death or crying or pain, no more suffering. All the old has passed away, and God makes everything new. Ultimately, there is true shalom, complete restoration, perfect wholeness. And on this All Saints Sunday, this passage offers us comfort and hope as we remember those who have gone before us in faith and now dwell with God. All Saints offers us dedicated time to acknowledge our grief and the loss of those who have died, to celebrate their legacy, and to give thanks for their presence with God and for the promise that one day we will be united together with all the saints in a new creation. There's a verse in the book of Hebrews that I particularly love because of its imagery, and it comes to us from the 12th chapter of Hebrews, where the writer says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and the sin that clings so closely, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us." Notice the image that the writer creates in this verse. It's as if in this life, we are running a race, but we're not running it alone. We are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, the communion of saints, cheering us on, encouraging us. There's so much more to this life than what we see and what we can fully know. Indeed, we are surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, by the communion of saints. And it's in the thin places that we not only experience God in a profound way and we can glimpse the eternal, but we can also sense the presence of the saints. In just a moment, we will celebrate the sacrament of Holy Communion. And one of my favorite theologians, Frederick Buechner, observed this about the sacraments. He said, "A sacrament is when something holy happens. It is transparent time which you can see through to something deep inside time. You are apt to catch a glimpse of the almost unbearable preciousness and mystery of life. In other words, a sacrament is a thin place." When we celebrate Holy Communion, we not only remember the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ and give thanks that he gave up his life so that we could have life live forever in the love of God, but we also participate in the eternal. We recognize that we celebrate the sacrament along with the communion of saints, and we anticipate one day when we will join with all the saints at Christ's heavenly banquet. Thin places are places of transformation, because when we encounter God, we can't help but be changed. So as we enter into a time now of Holy Communion, I invite you to listen carefully to the words of the liturgy as we lift up the saints. And I invite us also to open our hearts to the presence of God and this great cloud of witnesses that surrounds us. And may we be transformed by God's grace and by Christ's living presence in our midst.